I'm going to show you how to make a Sinterferers instrument. First of all, I'm going to add an oscillator. And I'm going to control the frequency of this oscillator with a mathematical graph, which is defined by the formula here. I can select one of these presets as well if I don't want to type one in. I'm going to control the oscillator's frequency with the output of this, so I'm going to connect that to the frequency input of the oscillator. Now, to get the graph to output a value over time, I need to connect the input of the graph to a counter, and if I want to control the wavelength, I need to set the minimum and maximum values for the counter, which I'm going to set to that. You see how it controls the wavelength, and the step controls the detail of the graph, so I'm going to set that low so that we have a nice detailed graph. I think I'll go for the wiggle graph. It's a little bit more interesting than a regular sine. It's just two sine waves superimposed on top of each other. Okay, so what does this sound like? Let's play and see what happens. Okay, so we can see, let's make it a bit bigger. We can see that this dot shows how the counter is outputting this value from the graph to the oscillator at a time. And let's speed it up a bit. Right, that'll do for now. I want to create a few controls to enable users to perform this instrument. So I'm going to add a range input to control the range of the frequency of the oscillator. And I want to set that to some reasonable values for an oscillator, which is probably, I don't know, 20, you can set it to whatever you want, but let's go for 20 to 2000. That's quite extreme, but we can choose to narrow it down if you like. Okay, we'll make it low. So let's make it low for now. I'm going to close that up and add some controls for the speed that the dot traverses the graph. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to add scalar input to control the interval and the step. Now, the range of this component is controlled by the range dictated by the input, which we can control manually, or we can control it with a range input and automate that. But so you can see here the input interval is 1 to 100. We're probably not going to need 100 because that's very slow, so let's make it 20 or something, or I don't know, 60. And then the step is ranging between 0.1 and 3, which is probably okay for us. Great. Okay, so I'm going to put that on the panel so I can control the interval, and I'm going to put this component onto the performance panel so that I can control the step, the detail of the graph, and I'm going to add the range as well. And I think that's enough. Oh, and we'd like to see the graph on the panel, so let's add that too. And give it a nice colour. Green, maybe pink. Let's go for pink. Okay, let's collapse on that and go to the performance panel. And now we need to rearrange our components. Now I know I want to combine multiple of these, so I'm going to try to arrange these so that it works on a smaller width. To expand that a bit, move that over there, and let's put the knobs at the bottom. if we go back there, I mean we can play around with that if we like, but it'll be more fun if we've got more than one wave to control at a time, because then they'll interact with each other, and that's the whole point of the Sinterferers. Okay, so we're going to go back to the edit mode, and I'm going to put all of these into a little box by doing this. Now this box, well, it's called a macro, is a container that I can reuse all of that functionality as many times as I like, and I can define inputs and outputs and control and automate all of that. So this is, what shall I call this, OS graph. Oops. And I'm going to export it, because if I don't export it, it's not going to be available for reuse. So I'm just going to put that in, save that. Now, if I close that down and open up the macro pane, we see that we've got an OS graph component that we can drop in. So I'm going to add that, and I'm going to add those to the panel, and let's have one more for the hell of it. Okay, now let's see what happens if we go back to performance mode. We can drag these out, oopsie, and put them beside each other, or however way you like, but probably easiest next to each other like that. And now we can see what happens when we combine these waves. So now I've moved that one slightly off frequency. I'm going to move this one slightly off step. And move that one slightly lower. So with the very subtle differences, we get this interesting effect where the waves start to almost quarrel somehow and cancel each other out and interfere. You need to fiddle around with the settings to get an interesting result. Make it move slowly across the graph. We can turn that right the way up, and then they're going to move all rather slowly. Put them all down low. That's an interesting vibration there. But there we are. You can muck around with the settings. You can perform it, and perhaps a different graph. And we could add controls to change the type of graph that is displayed and being used to control the frequency of the oscillator. There's all kinds of ways that you could extend this, but that's enough for now. Thank you. Bye-bye.